I know I haven't been on here in ages to make a video, so today I want to chat about 5 things that I learned from buying a house when I was 23. Now these things are really aimed at younger people. I'll do another video later on that's more general and kind of wider scope when it comes to things that you need to watch out for. But with this little video, I want to chat to people who are in their early 20s, who are only thinking about buying now, and they're hearing a lot of things from people in daily life that are maybe putting them off or making them a little bit worried about what they need to do. So let's get started with number 1. So the first thing I want to chat about is buying early. Now a lot of people when you're in your early 20s, you'll be like, oh, your whole lives ahead of you, you don't really need to be looking at buying a house yet. But I have to say, in my situation, buying early was the best thing I could have done. Now, I didn't buy my house as an investment. I wasn't planning on flipping it or renting it out. It was my home. And it was a hard decision for me even to buy it because really I wanted to live at home in Wexford and just couldn't afford it. And to be fair, looking at it now with the way property prices in Wexford have gone over the last 15 years since I left, they never dropped. And if I hadn't have bought when I did at 23, I wouldn't have been able to afford a house in Wexford yet. And I would still be either renting and paying dead money out, or I'd be living with my parents. And I think that's why don't be afraid to just buy early if it's something that you want to do. Loads of people are going to tell you, oh, the property market will drop and it'll rise and you'll be able to afford something soon. But a lot of people telling you this grew up in a different time than you did, when houses were a fiver, or they were giving them away for free to a lot more people than they are now. So just keep in mind that there are times where holding tight and waiting for a property market to drop isn't necessarily the best plan of action. Okay, so the second thing I learned from buying a house when I was in my early 20s is just go in and find out the information from the bank about mortgages and about how they work as soon as you can. They're not tying you into anything. They're not locking you down and taking your money off you or anything. But what it does is it gives you real information to work with about what you need to get your mortgage. Again, it goes back to listening to people telling you all these different kind of hearsay stories about what you need for mortgages and what you're not allowed to do and what you're allowed to do, and going in and sitting down with a mortgage professional in a bank, with a broker, even in a broker's office, will just clear up a lot of that information. They're legally obliged to tell you the truth, so you're going to know what your options are a lot quicker, and you're going to have a lot clearer of a view about what you can do, sooner than just listening to your neighbours and your parents' friends and stuff like that. When I went to buy my house, I didn't know whether I'd be able to get a mortgage. I mean, nobody in my family had ever gotten a mortgage before, so I went in kind of going, sure, I'll give it a go and see will they give me the money, and sure, if they will, then I'll go from there and see what I can do. And they approved me for a mortgage for 110,000, which everyone else was looking at going, well, you're not going to get anything with that. And I just had to make it work because it was all the money they were going to give me. But the thing I have to say I'm the most happy about was the fact that I just went in and chatted to them, and I found out the information myself, and I wasn't just reading stuff online that was telling me these things that kind of weren't really relevant to necessarily the Irish property market or the Irish mortgage market. You know, you read stuff online and it's American or it's from the UK and stuff like that, and it's not that relevant to us in Ireland. So go in, meet with a mortgage professional, or do it online if that's what they're doing at the moment, and just find out the facts, and then see will they give you money, and then at least you can kind of go off and save for 5 years after that, but at least you know what the plan is from somebody who is going to tell you accurate information. Okay, so this is a big one for me, and it's one of these things that people message me all the time on Cheap Irish Houses to ask me about. They say, I don't think I could take on a house like this because I'm not a building professional, or I'm not handy. And the thing about it is I learned this when I was younger, you don't need to be handy to take on a house that needs work like this. You just need to be willing to learn how to do this stuff. There are a lot of trades that aren't super complicated to do a rough job on. So let's say, for example, carpentry. Like, my dad's a carpenter, and I mean, he's so tasty and everything he does is just so beautiful. But when I look at the carpentry that was done in my farmhouse, it was done by the people that lived in it who weren't professionals, and everything's a bit hinky and a bit wobbly and stuff doesn't really fit properly. And my best efforts in putting stuff into my house actually looks a lot more in place than the stuff my dad does, because the stuff my dad does looks so fancy and perfect, and no walls are level, nothing's straight in my house. So the wobbly kind of handmade stuff actually looks a lot better. So I think when you go into this, don't go, I can't take on a house like this in my early 20s because I'm not a building professional. I don't have a trade. I don't work on building sites every day. You can do this if you've a bit of a hunger to learn and you're willing to kind of not have everything absolutely perfect, but just get it done. So things like I said before, carpentry is one of those things that you can learn as a hobby. You can do simple things. You can learn how to put up that tongue and groove sheeting, which is in all these houses. You know, you can learn how to put skirting boards down. You can learn how to repair doors or even make doors. These are simple things. Even things like plastering as well. Like, you're not going to be going in and hardwalling a 5-bedroom bungalow like some professional plasterer, but you can do a small bit of cement work on your garden walls, or maybe you can patch holes where the people before you had holes in the wall and you didn't really want to keep them like that. You can learn so much. You do not need to be the child of a building professional or a building professional to take on one of these houses. And it's really, really important that you remember that and have a bit of confidence and a bit of fun. And I guarantee you when people come to visit you, they are not going to have a clue what you did and what anybody else did, because you don't pay attention to stuff like that in their houses either. So in the same vein as what I was talking about in point number 3, point number 4 is still about getting work done in your house and doing stuff yourself. There are some things that you cannot do yourself, or that I really wouldn't advise you to do yourself. And when you're younger, there are people who will almost err on the upper side of the confidence level, where they'll be like, oh, I can do anything, I'll just give it a go and it's fine, sure, what's the worst that can happen? There are a couple of things with an old house you need to leave to the professionals. And one of them I always knew, and the other one I learned the hard way. The first one, electricity. Anything to do with anything to do with electricity, get somebody in to do it. Don't do it yourself. Don't put yourself in that amount of danger. It's not the most expensive trade to get in to do work on your house, and it's one of those things that once it's done, it's done. So that one for sure, I kind of always knew not to do myself, so that's fine. But the second one is any work with large trees on your land. Now, I guarantee you, any of you guys that buy old houses are going to come up against this. You've trees on your land that look like they're going to fall, or that need trimming, or maybe they have fallen in a storm, and I guarantee you that you have no idea how intricate the work is to try and get a really, really large 80-year-old tree felled safely on your land. This is the kind of thing not only that can kill you if the tree falls on you, but it can damage one of your outbuildings. It can fall on electricity wires and just kill bloody everybody. You have to be careful with anything you do with large trees. And that's one of those things I think that people don't really know and people don't really get told. I mean, unless you're in farming circles, you don't really get bombarded with this safety first in the farmyard, safety when you're outside in your house. And the thing about it is, a lot of us are moving into farmyards and moving into these little complexes of buildings that have quite difficult things that need to be maintained, and those tall trees are one of them. I don't cut down my trees. Generally what I do is if they fall, they fall. And then we'll cut them up for firewood, because I love trees probably as much as I love old houses. But at the same time, we have had trees that have fallen on outbuildings. We've had trees that have been growing quite tall close to electricity wires on our land. And when it comes to that stuff, you get the professionals in, and don't get cocky, because you're going to kill yourself. Okay, lastly, the biggest improvements that you can make on your house aren't necessarily always the most expensive ones. I see a lot of young people buying houses like these and coming in and just throwing all of their money at the house that they've gotten allowed in their mortgage. And the thing about it is that some of the things that you can do to an old house like this that really improve your quality of life, your opinion of the house, the pride you have in the place, they're not always the biggest budget items, these big ticket items that everybody feels like they need to do. I'm going to give you a few examples. Right, when you move into a house like this, instead of just gutting the whole place and basically building a brand new house on your land, give the outside of the house a lick of paint. Give your windows a lick of paint. Paint the door, get your gutters and your fascia boards and all painted. Get your gates and your boundary walls painted. Even if it's just in white for the beginning so you're not committing to too much. This kind of thing makes this huge difference to how you feel about your house when you move into it. Sure, you can leave it like a building site for 2 years, spend 70,000 turning it into a bungalow, but at the end of the day, if you come in the beginning of the summer, you whitewash your house, you let everything grow back for that summer and see what way this house is meant to be lived in, it actually makes a massive difference. As well as painting, another thing that's quite inexpensive to do and makes a big difference is landscaping your yard. Now, I am not a landscaping person. I don't get landscapers in. I think some people grow up in Ireland and landscaping isn't really a thing that exists in our world. I'm definitely one of those people. But when we had the house in the beginning, like obviously I lived in it for years as it was, but when I decided I wanted to get a bit of landscaping done, we rented a digger and a dumper and we just got in and we flattened stuff out and moved stuff around and basically played Bob the Builder for a week, which was fantastic. And the amount of a difference that made to this house is huge. This isn't even stuff that's inside the house. When it comes to inside the house, like if you're going in and you're insulating 3 or 4 rooms that you never use, or maybe you're putting new roofs on all 9 outbuildings that you have in the place, this is money that could be spent on stuff that makes you feel better about your house from the very, very beginning. So don't assume everything that makes you feel great about this little house and brings it along in leaps and bounds has to be expensive. Paint by far is the #1 thing I would do. The landscaping after you've lived in it for a while. Now don't come in and scalp it in the beginning because it'll be just an absolute disaster and you won't know where the roses were planted, where the paths were, maybe there's apple trees in the back of the garden and you've just come in with a bulldozer and took everything out of it. So you need to live in the place first and then like paint it, get new guttering up so you're ferrying the water away from the house, even putting land drains in to get those walls dried out. These are not expensive things to do, and I think people really don't realise that the inexpensive things in houses like this are usually the things that make the biggest difference. People who lived in these houses weren't well off when they had them. A lot of the stuff that's done in these houses that makes them look genuine and authentically vernacular is actually quite affordable stuff. So don't spend all your money in the first 6 months and turn the place into a bungalow, because we don't like that at all now, do we? No. So that's it. 5 things that I learned from buying a house in my early 20s. Like I said before, I'll come back with some tips for people of all ages another time. But at the moment, I just want any of you guys who are thinking about saving an old house in the Irish countryside to really just realise that you can do it and you don't have to be a professional and you don't have to have buckets of money. You just have to want to save the houses. And I would much rather see people saving these houses with small budgets that were going to do it sympathetically than people coming in and just turning all these little Irish cottages into modern bungalows. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up because that helps me when it comes to earning a couple of cents off of every time one of you guys watches this video. And I will be back soon with another one.